Good morning. Welcome to another Money Monday on the Daily Huddle. We're going to continue our discussion from last week, talking about college and paying for it and those kind of things. So
yeah, super exciting conversation. I'm Kimberly, this is Zach, and we are your hosts today. But before we get started, do you have a funny, cheesy joke? Well, do you have a cheesy joke? Because I know your jokes aren't quite funny.
I don't know. Let's see. Did you know Oxford University was founded before the Aztec Empire? That explains the sacrifices my parents had to make to pay my tuition.
I don't get that. Can you explain it?
Yes.
I never get Zach's jokes. Well, good morning. I hope all of you understood Zach's cheesy joke better than I did, because, he'll have to explain it to me later. But welcome to Money Mondays on the Daily Huddle. Thank you for joining us today on November the 6th. I am Kimberly. This is Zach. And we want to welcome you to our day.
Yes, absolutely. And yes, I hear the drums in the intro every single time, and it makes me want to start dancing. So I saw that chat that just came out. So yeah, it's an interesting time of year when you're a parent of a college student, prospective college student coming up in the next little bit. But before we get to that point, let's talk about the things that get us focused, right? So question number one. Calling on microphones with no pictures. Let's see. All right. Project 24/7. How are you this morning?
And you can share your name with us too. I know that's not really your name. I mean, maybe it is.
That's okay. I'm Michelle.
Nice.
And that's my nonprofit, project247.org.
Awesome.
It's a new life-saving tool in the fight against suicide.
Awesome.
Okay. Outstanding.
So, yeah.
Very, very necessary.
How am I this morning?
Yes.
I am the way I say that I am. And I am fantabulous because I'm here with y'all.
Awesome. Well,
Wonderful.
Thank you for joining us. And I love that word, fantabulous. It makes it even all better. So thank you. Thanks for sharing. Andrea, what time is it and what are you grateful for?
The time is now, which is the only time we have. And I'm grateful for family.
Awesome. It's that time of year too, right? With Thanksgiving and all of the thankfulness is coming up. So
absolutely.
Yes. Awesome. I thought I saw Sorrel, but I don't anymore. Oh, there's Sorrel or Gia. Sorrel or Gia?
I don't know. Sorrel's unmuted. Let's get him.
Okay, Sorrel. Where are you and who will you hug today?
I am right where I'm supposed to be. And today I'm going to hug my sons.
Awesome. All right, guys. Well, welcome to Money Monday. Like I said earlier, today we're going to talk about college and college funding and how should you pay for it and what should you know about paying for college. Last week, we talked about, something very similar. When should you start saving for college? And lots of different answers, I think, to that question. But today we're going to talk about what should you know about paying for college.
Yeah. So whether we're ready for it or not, or whether we've planned for it in enough time, the moment comes where, at least if that's what we want and that's what they want, our kids want to go to college. And so we have to think about that from a parent perspective. And last week, we dropped kind of a nugget out there that if you're not prepared personally for your retirement, you probably should not make paying for your child's college a big focus of yours. You should work with them directly on how they want to help pay for that, because it's much more expensive for your children to pay for your lack of retirement planning down the road than it is for you to pay for them to pay for their own college. that's just kind of my the math, the numbers work that way. It's definitely, I was going to say that's my viewpoint, but it's not. That's actually factual. There are certain colleges I'm sure they could choose to go to and pay full tuition that would change that math. But for the average college tuition, especially from a public state school, it's definitely going to be cheaper for your children to pay for their own college than it is to pay for your lack of retirement planning. But let's talk about this as a joint venture, right? So what are some things that you should know, or that you and your student should know about approaching college tuition and how to pay for that? Now, there are a lot of different thoughts about borrowing money for school, but the first thing before we get to that is you have to start with establishing need according to the federal government, right?
For scholarships and everything, right?
Yeah, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter from any institution, at least that I've dealt with. We've had one go all the way through, and we have another one that's a junior this year. And this process happens every single year, and that is filling out the FAFSA, or the free application for federal student aid. Basically, what it does is it determines based on a set of criteria what your contribution as a family, or at least until this year, it determined what your expected family contribution was. This year they're changing that. The FAFSA usually comes out in October, so I have a little bit of a tick because I usually have it done by now. But it's coming out in December at some point this year because they've changed some of that math and those algorithms.
And I think it takes it from over like 100 questions to down to like 30, which is a big deal for people like Zach who have to fill out that form, because I'm not the one that does that.
Yeah, so it is basically laying your financial life out on a piece of paper. There are a lot of questions in the FAFSA, and one section that we'll talk to you guys about from a planning perspective is the student assets and student income piece. When you talk about student assets, when you go into financial aid, it's much, much more heavily weighted for your child to have an asset in their name than it is for you to have assets in your name. The actual student assets are expected to be spent through at a much higher rate. So from a planning perspective, a lot of people want to do things like we've mentioned 529 plans and those kind of things. Those actually become the child's or the student's asset, because a 529 plan, however funded, is for the benefit of that student. And that's what the money has to come out of there for their needs in school. So from a planning perspective, going back to last week, if you're starting your savings process, then you want to make sure that you save the money in vehicles that don't necessarily give your money to your children, right, for their college benefit. One of the things that is kind of funny that we've also used in an educational bit is, if I want to pay for my kids' college, let's say, and that's something that I've said I want to do, if I give them the money and then allow them to pay for their college, it not only makes them have to pay more of that money or qualify for less grants, if you will, or federal aid, but it also takes away my carrot for graduation. And so what we tell our clients that want to pay for their kids' college, whether they're prepared to pay for it in cash or not, is great. Let's get them in school. Let's get them making good grades. Let's get them headed in the right direction by borrowing money for that, and by putting those loans, which in the case of everything except for one of the Parent Plus loans, those loans are in the student's name as far as repayment is concerned. Once you cross over into Parent Plus loans, then you're signing on the dotted line for that too. So it's a whole nother piece. But we tell our clients to go talk with their student, look at the dollars and cents of what each university or higher education school is going to cost, and say, okay, this is how much it's going to cost. This is what we're going to do to fund that. And at the end of the day, when you put a diploma in my hand, I will either pay off your loans or I will pay those payments for you, one or the other. If you don't do that, right, if you don't complete what you start, then that's going to be your responsibility. If you go out as a parent and borrow a bunch of money to do that, then you've got to pay that back or hurt your own credit scenario.
Taking all my comments.
Oh, I'm sorry. So, but I like to talk about going into this process as a group effort. And we've had a lot of success. It was but very frustrating. Especially our oldest daughter was definitely a STEM kid, very spreadsheet oriented, and she picked based on the fact that we told her she was going to have to pay for her undergraduate education. And she graduated with honors from the Honors College, and we are helping her pay for her student loans. However, our second daughter, much more artistic and emotional about her approach to things, did not necessarily put the pragmatic math approach to where she wanted to go. It was more about the college experience and what she wanted it to feel like. And so when we had to put that on the spreadsheet, we realized she was going to graduate from college from her chosen university with a couple $100,000 in student loans. And based on her income path or her track with her degree, it was going to take her about 15 to 20 years if she paid all of it back in salary with interest and everything else. So it was a very eye-opening experience for her to see it from that perspective, and it helped her to make different decisions. But things to talk about other than where to put assets and how that works would be, what can our students do?
Well, I think it's important to go back to the very beginning, right? So we all have to do our FAFSA, and our FAFSA tells us, it used to be expected family contribution. I think this year they changed it to like student aid index or something, right? Some different name, to tell you how much you're expected to pay as a family. And if you haven't saved it, then you have to figure out where it's going to come from, right? When we were in college, we could just go take out a student loan, and we could take out that student loan and for living and for everything. Like I lived pretty great in college because I borrowed all my money, right? We can't do that anymore. Kids can't do that anymore. So I have these numbers here. I'm just going to read them to you because, again, when my oldest went to college a few years ago, I was really surprised by this. The average in-state college tuition without scholarships is between $20,000 to $25,000 a year. That's a lot of money, right? To spend to go to college. And so I was like, okay, how, if we wanted to borrow this, how do we pay for it? How do we borrow this money? And as a first-year student, no more, they can only borrow federally, which is usually how we used to borrow all of our money, right? They can only borrow federally up to $5,500 per year. Well, if school is 20,000, 25,000, where does the other 15 to 20,000 come from, right? I had no idea that that was the maximum that they were allowed to borrow. Second year, they can borrow more, 6,500, third year, 7,500. And then you've got your graduate year and things like that, that is a little different. You've got your total aggregate as far as how much you can borrow, but what do you do with the difference? If you haven't saved for your kids' college, you don't have 529s, you don't want to take it from your 401k, what do you do? And a lot of parents go out and they get Parent Plus loans. That's what they're called, Parent Plus loans. Whereas before, I could just sign my name and, borrow as much money as I wanted. When I was in college, you can't do that now. So those Parent Plus loans, number one, the interest rates, in my opinion, are they're better than a credit card. They're probably at this moment better than an equity line from your home or something like that. But it also puts you financially responsible for those loans, not just your child, for the entire course of that loan being there. So I want you guys to think about that, because I think about it from a qualifying for a mortgage perspective, or, all these different things, right? So if I have a student loan that I took out for my child and it cost me $50,000 to get them through that college education that I hadn't borrowed or that I hadn't saved for, and then my payment on that is $700 or $800 a month. That $700 or $800 a month, if I'm trying to buy another house, comes directly out of my debt to income ratio, even though it's my child's student loan, because I've technically co-signed for it, right? I am on the you see our puppies. It's okay. I'm on the hook for that responsibility until that's paid off. Well, if it takes them 15 or 20 years to pay off that loan, then that's my responsibility for 15 or 20 years. So I want you to think so much about not just how do you pay for your kids' college, but what does it do to you financially, and how does it limit you, and how does it hurt you if you've got 4 kids? We have 4 kids. That's a lot of Parent Plus loans out there. So think about all those different things. You've got your student loans that you can borrow. You've got your Parent Plus loans that you can borrow. You can borrow from your 401k if you chose to. I would say absolutely not. But if you did, at least make sure that you've got the diploma in your hand before you start pulling that out of your retirement. You can borrow from your home equity loan. There are all these different options. But I really think that for most people, if they haven't saved for their child to go to college and they do feel like it's their responsibility to pay for it, the most economical way for them to do that is at the end of that term, at the end of that time, is just assume those payments, right? Assume those payments, put something in place for that, and it's going to be much less painful than pulling $50,000 out of somewhere that you need growing for you and dumping it into that student loan. And figure that out. We obviously know that there are grants, and grants are an option, and we know that there's scholarships. So I will tell you, first and foremost, I am not a scholarship expert, but there is a lot of money out in that college world and that financial world and for colleges that goes unfunded. Nobody applies for it, so they don't actually give that money away. It's crazy because we've been, to several different college seminars as our girls were going through, and we've heard them talk. And I remember going to one with Emma, and this lady said, anything that you get from a scholarship perspective after your first year of college, so starting in year 2, can come directly to you in cash. And she was like, so I made like $100,000 a year when I went to college, and scholarship money that came directly to her, that then obviously that's an excessive number, but that allowed her to spend it on tuition or whatever, because they didn't qualify it after that first year. The problem is, and the problem that I've had and that we've had, is that when as smart as our kids are, because they are very smart and talented and committed and excited and want to change the world, when they are seniors in high school, it is hard enough to get them to actually apply to college, much less complete all these scholarship applications and write this essay. And, so is it viable? Absolutely. Do I think you should apply for as many scholarships as you can? Absolutely. Do I also think that it's not your reality and it's going to cause a lot of fights at your house? You got to figure out how to bribe them, right? To make them apply for those scholarships and things like that as well. But that's definitely an option that you have out there.
Well, and to that note, when they understand the fiscal responsibility of paying for college, they have a tendency to, my kids, I don't know, we set up accounts attached to ours years ago so we could get them a debit card and we could put money there if they needed it, or if they did a summer job, they had the access to their money for what was their choice. And but they were quick to ask to spend our money, right? Hey, I want to go get my nails done with my friends. And we say, sure, that's great. How much money do you have in your account? Oh, I thought you were going to pay for it. I don't need my nails to be done. So there's a certain thought process that goes into that when they understand that perspective, and that money doesn't grow on those proverbial money trees, and that they have to be a part of that process. So, but yes, money is left on the table. And I have friends that are and have been in college admissions offices and financial aid offices. And I want to finish or go into this probably by having that. I know one of Kimberly's best friends from childhood worked in financial aid at the University of Georgia for a long time. Maybe we can talk to her. We also have folks from the school I went to that went to school there with me and then went into admissions. And one of the things he always said, and it's a small private college in North Georgia, and they have plenty of money, right? They're a 4-year school now. And he said, if a student wants to come here and we want that student here, we will not let funding keep them out. And that was a pretty powerful statement. It's all about that child finding the right school that they want to go to, letting them know that and communicating. So it's a growing process for them. But for parents that are sitting there staring down the barrel of this borrowing money or this huge price tag, because if you look around out there, the average cost, if you pay full price for college, it's ridiculous. Don't get disheartened, because no matter where you are in that financial spectrum, your kids can go to school without you having to pay out of your cash or your retirement all of that money. It just takes planning, it takes awareness, and it takes work. So that's what I would say.
And communication with the financial aid office, asking about scholarships and asking what's available and letting them know that you want to go there. I've found just through our personal experience, there's a lot more money in private schools, private colleges than there are public colleges. So they have more room to give and make things happen. So just know that when you're out there. I want to read you guys, just because I think it's important, I want to read you guys the kind of an asset list and how it either affects your financial aid or it doesn't, because I think that's important to know as well, especially while we're planning for college coming up and what's going to affect me and what's not going to affect me, what counts for me, what counts against me. So when it comes to FAFSA, which is the federal application,
The
what is
free
it?
application for federal student aid.
Thanks for that.
Mhm.
Equity and investment real estate counts against you, but not your primary residence. If we're talking about the CSS profile, which is the private school profile, that's a different conversation. But typically, with FAFSA, primary residence, the equity inside your primary residence doesn't count against you. But if you have other real estate, it does. It counts as an asset. Cash and savings or other bank accounts counts against you. UGMA or UTMA accounts counts against you. And when I say counts against you, it means you're going to have to use some of it. They're taking this money and saying you have to use it to pay for college. Certain types of businesses, such as those with 100 or more employees, or part ownership of businesses that are not majority owned by your family, counts against you. Stocks and bonds, mutual funds, the value of the 529 plans or Coverdell ESAs, commodities, and cash gifts to students, which are counted as student incomes. The things that are not counted against you, which I think you guys need to listen to very, very, very clearly, your 401k, your Roth and your traditional IRA accounts. Obviously, if you're taking withdrawals, that's a different conversation, but the value in that doesn't count against you as far as your need and things like that. Cash value of life insurance policies and qualified annuities. So there are a lot of people that instead of funding a 529, fund life insurance. Why? Because the rules are different. They don't have to use it for college, first and foremost. It's tax-free when it comes out, as long as you structure it properly, but it also doesn't count against you at all in your financial aid process. That's a big deal. Annuities are the same thing. So sometimes if people have a lot of money sitting in a checking account, they'll roll that into an annuity. They don't need it anyway, right, at that moment. So they'll roll it into an annuity. They'll lock it up for that period of time, and it doesn't count against them for college. Simple IRAs, KIOs, pension plans, things like that, and annuities. So it's important when we're trying to plan for our kids' education, we're trying to plan for college, and we're trying to do our best, and we hear 529 and we start funding it with as much as we can afford to, or grandparents do, or whatever. We also have to understand how it affects them as far as qualifying for financial aid, grants, scholarships, everything in the future. And maybe there are different ways or better options to look at going forward. So just wanted you to have an idea of that list, because sometimes we hurt ourselves unintentionally.
Yeah, and I definitely believe, and you can kind of see this trend with the new generation going off to college, that a lot of them are not going a traditional route because they see the overpriced nature of tuition for traditional colleges, and they realize what they can do. And I mean, I say this, I want my children to go to college because I want them to have that experience. I think it's a time to grow in a safer environment, not just jumping out there on their own. But Kimberly and I both went to college to be public school educators, and I taught 7th grade. She taught social studies. I mean, she taught special ed, and we both have a degree in middle school education, and she has special education. And we've spent the majority of our money-making livelihood earning an income off of a 40-hour class and a test that we paid the state about $300 for. We've gotten more licenses and done those kind of things, but all of them combined and put together over the 20 years plus of experience in this world would cost a fraction of one semester of college tuition. So there's a lot of kids that are seeing these kind of things, and they're going into trades and that don't require that. So that's another negative, if you will, about earmarking funds for education. That's what I wanted to say, is that put them somewhere where you can use them, or they can use them however they want to. That gives you options at the end of the day. So when we plan, we want to plan for options. Let's open it up for some conversation, some discussion. Questions we'll try to answer. We're not experts. We're just talking to you about our experience when it comes to this part of the financial plan. But ask away.
Or tell us your stories too. If there's anything you've learned or seen or found in the process of college and education funding. Let's chat. Because I get tired of talking just to Zach, so y'all talk to me.
So I will say that as you guys are thinking of questions or coming up with it, well, Gio here, and just right now in a second, there are ways to borrow money from your 401k that are creative if you choose to do that later, and we'll talk about that another time. So, Gio, how are you this morning?
Hi, sorry. Thank you. This was really great. Quite confronting, I have to say. I love how you started. It was like, it is more expensive for your children to pay for your lack of retirement planning than their college tuition. That that's so mean.
Well, I
But no,
mean,
but I got it. I really got it. My son is 17. I have a 6-year-old. So this conversation is certainly for me. And I'm really excited about him going to college. And I am very mindful of the diminishing return on investment. I'm mostly want him to go to college for what you're saying, for the experience, for the possibility that gets created in that world, more than what he can do in the next 4 years working for someone. And yeah, the return on experience is much greater than what he can do with the money he can make or the money I can spend in him going to college. But what I just wanted to say those things. This has been really eye-opening. I'm certainly not going to get a loan on his student loans from this conversation. That, if I ever consider it today, that stopped. So
get a
thank you for
federal,
this
just not parent.
conversation. Very, very useful for me.
Good.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Gio. We're happy to tell all you guys everything we know, which isn't everything, but we've had some bumps and bruises and figuring it out along the way. So any other comments or conversation that you guys want to have before we wrap up for the day?
Well, I'll tell you my little blurb then about borrowing money. If somebody decides they want to borrow money from their 401k, we always want to think about the consequences of our current decisions, right? So it's that what happens down the road from that. So we talk about funding our retirement first, right? And that it's more expensive, like Gio said, to pay for your kids to pay for your retirement plan than it is for them to pay for their college. But if I choose to, if I've accumulated assets inside of 401k and I choose to pay off student loans, or I choose to pay for college from that perspective, and we borrow from our 401k, the nice thing about borrowing from a 401k, especially if I'm not going to retire in the near future, is that when I pay that back, I'm paying myself a rate of return and not a bank. So when people think, well, I'm going to go borrow from the bank so that I can leave my 401k intact, you're basically wiping out the gains that your 401k might be making by paying that bank the 6-7% or whatever on those funds. So yes, your funds in your 401k might be hitting that average growth of the 6-7%. But if your interest rate on the other side is canceling that out, then why not borrow the funds out of your 401k? It's a loan and you're paying it back, but when you pay it back, you're paying it back to yourself. So
And it's not taxable as long as you borrow it, you don't withdraw it.
Correct. We don't want to withdraw, we want to borrow. And all 401k plans are different, and they have plan documents that specify how you can do those kind of things. But that's a strong way to do that. We actually have helped people do things like that through recessions and other things when they, we're in a tight spot. The key is putting the money back, not withdrawing it and spending it or doing something else with it, but borrow it from yourself and pay yourself back a rate of return. So that being said, I love this conversation because it's one of the scary ones that people, it seems to hit them real fast and out of nowhere. Because as we all know, if we've raised kids, you turn around and blink and they're 2 feet taller and they're leaving the house. And that reality is kind of set in on us a lot lately. But it's one of those things that you still have to get through, still have to do it. So we want people to approach that with excitement and possibility, not fear and dread. So anything you guys want to know about it from our experience, we're happy to share. But as we go forward today and we go out into the world, let's stay positive. Let's remember that there's always two sides to everything, right? And our 8 tenets as we go out: number 1, love. Number 2, laugh out loud. Have a good time. 3, stress less. We stress so much about things that we can't even control when sometimes we just need to relax. Number 4, take care of your body. Eat good food. Eat mostly plant-based. Number 5, give whatever you can, however you can. It just feels good and it's right. Number 6, sleep. Get some sleep. It'll start the beginning of the day so much better if you get rest. Move, exercise, get your body moving. And lastly, take your pause. Don't react right then. Check yourself before you wreck everything around you with an overreaction. So guys, it's great to see you. As always, we will see you same time, same place tomorrow on the Daily Huddle.
Bye, guys.